In the near future, humans extract ancient DNA from a long-extinct creature. They patch up the missing pieces with genes from a modern-day animal. Then, in a high-tech lab, they bring the species back to life. Sounds familiar? Well, yes, that's actually the plot of the original Jurassic Park. But the thing is, we're now living in the timeline where researchers are doing exactly that. Although this time, the star of the show isn't a raptor or a T-Rex. Believe it or not, scientists at Colossal Biosciences want to bring back the giant moa. Think of it as an ostrich, only twice as tall and way bulkier. It was a massive flightless bird that went extinct almost 600 years ago. The moa once roamed the forests of New Zealand, towering up to 12 feet tall with its neck stretched. This makes it the tallest bird to ever walk the planet. It weighed almost 500 pounds, but funny enough, that doesn't make it the heaviest bird that ever lived. That crown goes to Madagascar's elephant bird, but still, 500 pounds of bird is not something you want running at you in the woods. The giant moa didn't have wings or a beak built for battle, but it didn't need them. For thousands of years, it lived in peace because it had no natural predators, literally being the top bird. Well, almost. The only thing that could take down a moa was the Haast's eagle, a giant bird of prey with a 10-foot wingspan and claws like steak knives. That was the balance of nature, until people arrived. Around the 13th century, the Maori settled in New Zealand, and as humans do, they adapted quickly. The moa, big and slow as it was, became a crucial and probably delicious food source. Within just a few generations, the moa was gone, and not long after, so was the Haast's eagle. No more moa meant no more meals. It's just how nature and survival work. The Maori were skilled hunters, making a life in a new land. But their arrival marked a turning point in New Zealand's ecosystem, one we're still talking about today. The moa wasn't just big, it played a huge part in keeping forests healthy. Now, 600 years later, scientists want to recreate it using cutting-edge technology and ancient clues. But why go through all this effort to resurrect a bird that's been gone so long? Well, according to Colossal Biosciences, the same company behind those gene-edited direwolf cubs that we talked about before, it's not just about the wow factor. They say moas helped shape the landscape itself. In New Zealand, moas helped control vegetation and spread native plant seeds. They kept forests from becoming overgrown and unbalanced. Without them, some plants lost their main seed carriers, and invasive shrubs started to take over areas once kept in check. So the idea is, if we can't rewind the clock, maybe we can reboot the system. Introduce an animal that fills the same job that can help restore what's missing. Okay, but how do you bring back an extinct species? And is that even possible? Well, sort of. But not in the sci-fi clone a complete dinosaur way like in a movie. The original moa has been gone for centuries, and its DNA is damaged, degraded, and full of holes. So instead of making a perfect copy, researchers are going to remix, so to speak. They'll take whatever usable moa DNA they can find and patch the gaps using genes from its living relative, probably the emu. With a tool called CRISPR, which is like a Photoshop for genomes, they'll stitch it all together, tweak the embryo, and grow it in a lab. If all goes well, the result will be something that looks, walks, and stomps like a moa, but not exactly a genetic twin. It won't be a clone, and it definitely won't be 100% authentic. However, Colossal Biosciences says that's fine. If it behaves like a moa and fills the same job in the ecosystem, that's mission accomplished. So no, we're not recreating the past. Not literally. We're building something new that plays the same role. But here is where it gets interesting. Colossal Biosciences seems to be just getting started. They've got an entire extinction comeback roadmap in place. In addition to the giant moa, the company is also working on reviving the woolly mammoth, the dodo, and the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger. Each one vanished under different circumstances, but the goal is the same: to create a modern version that can fill the ecological gaps those animals left behind. Woolly mammoths were Ice Age elephants. They were befriending ground sloths and shaking the Arctic ground with each step, knocking down trees and flattening snow. During the Ice Age, this region wasn't the frozen wasteland we know today. It was called the Mammoth Steppe, a dry, windy grassland stretching from Spain to Siberia to Alaska, filled with cold, hardy grasses and scattered shrubs. Mammoths helped keep it that way. However, some scientists think that their disappearance may have turned open ecosystems into soggy, carbon-trapping wetlands. So now, the idea is to mix mammoth DNA with Asian elephants to create a fuzzy, cold-loving hybrid that could help the Arctic stay grassy instead of swampy. Maybe even help slow down climate change by keeping the permafrost frozen a little longer. The dodo bird is probably the most famous extinct animal in history. It lived on the island of Mauritius, where it ate fruit and helped spread seeds across the forest. After European sailors arrived, the number of dodos slowly dwindled. It disappeared in the late 1600s, less than a century after it was first discovered, and some scientists believe that its absence had lasting effects on the island's ecosystem. One example would be the Tambalakoke tree, also known as the dodo tree, which might have depended on the dodo to help its seeds sprout. The theory has been debated, but it's safe to say that the dodo had a part in keeping the island's plant life balanced. Now, Colossal is aiming to reintroduce a bird that's similar to the dodo, hoping it can help those forests regrow as well. And then there's the thylacine, my favorite. It's part wolf, part kangaroo, with tiger-like stripes. Despite these strange features, it was a top predator and helped control prey populations in its habitat. But after being blamed for attacks on livestock, it was hunted to extinction. Researchers believe a new thylacine could rebalance nature where things have gone out of hand. So yeah, the MOA might be the headline this time, but it's just one project on a much longer to-do list. However, this is where the big debate begins, because not everyone's on board with this whole bring back a beast plan. While scientists dream of second chances, plenty of people still have big questions. For example, are we actually helping the environment or just poking it with our really expensive science stick? These new animals aren't exact copies. They're mashups. Close enough maybe, but not the originals. Also, ecosystems aren't machines where we can just swap out a part and expect them to work the same. There's also the wildcard factor. A lab-made MOA might not act like the ancient one. It could munch the wrong plants or throw off the balance by outcompeting something that wasn't even around the last time it existed. Some experts worry that tossing new species into today's ecosystem could backfire. After all, the world they're coming back to? It's different. And in some cases, their old homes don't even exist anymore. There's also a deeper concern: the message this sends about extinction. If people believe we can just bring things back, will they take conservation any less seriously? Will protecting endangered species feel less urgent if extinction stops being permanent? So while the science behind all this is undeniably impressive, the ethical questions aren't going away. Should we be reviving species, or should we be doing more to protect the ones that are still here? If both options are true, how do we do so successfully? Whether it's mammoths, moas, or dodos, one thing's clear: we're not just studying nature anymore. We have the power to rewrite it. And like Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. Let me know what you think. And as always, stay on the bright side.
So, let's consider Velociraptors as pets. Yeah, walking your dino in the park, playing fetch, and we probably could have it now if it hadn't been for those pesky asteroids. To be fair, we ended up with mammals, which, let's face it, it was a pretty solid trade. But here's the big question: why didn't reptiles make a grand comeback? Why did mammals rise instead? The answer, believe it or not, involves fungi. Yup, the same stuff that gives you athlete's foot and ruins your leftovers also wiped out dinosaurs. Welcome to the weirdest twist in extinction history. It all started with a very bad day 66 million years ago, when a 9-mile-wide asteroid crash-landed in what's now Mexico. The space rock was moving so fast that it vaporized on impact, punching out a crater 10 times its own size. Now, if you remember anything from your physics class, and no judgment if you don't, high speed means high energy. And that energy turned into a blast wave and heat so intense it could have cooked anything in the area instantly. And it didn't stop there. Tiny molten rock beads rained down globally, generating radiation equivalent to 20 million megatons. Forests caught fire, wildfires raged across continents, and the sky filled with soot and sulfuric acid. Earth turned into a planetary air fryer. Then came the blackout. With all that debris in the atmosphere, half of the sunlight couldn't reach the surface, making sea surface temperature drop by 13 degrees Fahrenheit. Within just a few weeks, the planet entered a literal impact winter. There was no sunlight for at least 2 years, and Earth experienced a 15-year-long climate collapse while the dust slowly cleared. 75% of all animal species completely disappeared. Those that survived the initial blast faced tsunamis, starvation, and the collapse of entire food chains. If you were a big animal, say over 55 pounds, your chances were basically zero. And if you were a plant, forget about it. No sunlight means no photosynthesis. And that means no plankton, no trees, no grass, and eventually no herbivores, which means no carnivores either. It was a domino effect straight into extinction. The Earth became a cold, dark graveyard. But there was one organism that looked around and said, "Yeah, this is perfect." And it was fungi. Now, fungi thrive in moist, dark, and decaying environments. You know, like a world blanketed in ash full of dead trees and rotting animals. With no sunlight and plummeting temperatures, fungi had a once-in-a-lifetime chance to take over. And they did. Fossil records show widespread fungal contamination in the period after the impact. It was a global fungal bloom, like the moldy icing on an apocalyptic cake. Now, this was great news for fungi, but terrible news for reptiles. See, fungi aren't just harmless mushrooms. Many are pathogens, and they love cold-blooded creatures. Reptiles, including some of the dinosaurs that survived, were ectothermic. This means that they relied on external heat sources to warm their bodies. In a normal situation, a nice sunny rock would do the trick. Bask in the sun, raise your internal temperature, and fight off infections. It's like an induced fever, because, unlike mammals, like me, their bodies don't do it for them. And yes, I'm a mammal too. But there was no sun, remember? And a cold reptile is a sluggish reptile. Their metabolism slows down, which might sound like a good thing, because it means they can survive on less food and oxygen. But in this new hostile world, it was a disaster. They had less energy to move, less energy to hunt, and couldn't even digest food properly. Their bodies were colder, weaker, and easier for fungi to invade. Reptile reproduction was hit hard too. Most reptiles lay eggs, which are usually buried in the soil or left in hidden nests. But with the soil now damp, cold, and riddled with fungal spores, those eggs became easy targets. Spores penetrated the thin egg shells, destroying the embryos before they could hatch. So not only were adult reptiles struggling to fight infections, but their future generations were being wiped out in the nest. This vulnerability isn't just ancient history. We still see reptiles and amphibians struggling with fungi today. There's a type of fungi, hey, you try to pronounce this, that decimated frog populations. And reptiles in colder or poorly maintained environments have to deal with fungal skin infections. Which brings us to the protagonists of the era, mammals. At the time of the impact, mammals were tiny, scrappy creatures about the size of a rat. But they had a secret weapon, actually several. First off, mammals are warm-blooded, something scientists call endothermic. They produce their own body heat. And that alone gives them a major edge, because most fungi can't tolerate temperatures above 98.6 Fahrenheit. So, while reptiles were freezing and being turned into fungal buffets, mammals were literally too hot to handle. Their warm bodies acted like natural shields against infection. And then there's reproduction. Mammals carry their young inside their bodies. This means that their developing babies were safe and warm, insulated from the hostile external environment, instead of being exposed to the unfriendly world, protected just by a fragile shell. No eggs? No problem. Their metabolism was another secret weapon. Their fast-burning energy systems let them move more, hunt more, and eat more. And because they were small, they didn't need a lot of food. And here's the cool part. Mammals probably ate fungi. Yep, the same organisms ruining the lives of reptiles. And this fungal diet might have helped them boost their immune systems, giving them an evolutionary edge. Over generations, this resistance was passed down, which explains why fungal infections mostly give us an annoying rash, but still wreaks havoc among reptiles. Of course, not all dinos were cold-blooded. In fact, some massive creatures, like the T-Rex, were warm-blooded. But, warm-blooded or not, their size worked against them. You know, giants need giant meals, and in the post-impact world, those meals didn't exist. Being warm-blooded helps, sure, but not when you're too big to feed. Small dinosaurs, however, were a different story. Some survived, and we call them birds. Their small size meant they were lighter and needed less food, and their feathers helped with insulation. Being able to fly was also a flex, since they could reach food in higher places. Their beaks and guts were adapted for flexible diets, and bigger dinos were definitely picky eaters. Evolution did its thing, and the line between birds and dinos blurred forever. The same survival playbook worked for mammals. Small size? Check. Safe reproduction? Check. Versatile diets? Double check. While the rest of the world was on pause, mammals scurried through the underbrush, dodging disaster and waiting for the dust to settle. And then it did. The sun eventually came back. Plants started growing again. Life rebooted. But this time, the stage was different, with big reptiles mostly gone. No more towering predators, no more thundering herds of horned beasts. Mammals had room to stretch, and they did. They grew fast, but not too fast. Mammals never got dinosaur-sized, and that's not a coincidence. Large herbivores today, like elephants, have it easy since their food doesn't run away from them. But large predators are rare for a good reason. Hunting is hard. Your prey sees you coming, so you can't be a big, tall dummy running around. Besides, you need energy to chase, stamina to fight, and a metabolism to match. And you know how that worked out for dinos. Not to mention, mammal bones aren't built like dinosaur bones. The latter had hollow structures, even air sacs, to support their size. But if you stack too much weight on a mammal's bone, it'll snap. Nature has limits, and mammals have learned to work within them. So, when the light returned, reptiles were fewer and more fragile, clinging to the edges of ecosystems. Mammals, on the other hand, were everywhere. Before the asteroid, dinosaurs kept mammals small, and mammals, well, they didn't get much say about that. But now, with the giants gone, mammals could finally level up. And fungi? Well, they stuck around too. But mammals had already passed the ultimate test and came out on top. Thanks to their body heat, internal babies, flexible diets, and a little help from some deadly mushrooms, mammals inherited Earth. So yeah, no pet Velociraptor. But maybe that's okay. You got a cat, right? Close enough. Actually, I think dogs are better. How do you feel about that? Let me know in the comments. So yeah, a giant asteroid fell to Earth and destroyed all dinosaurs with a blast wave. That's what we've all heard. It was a terrible disaster, but it was actually much worse. You can't even imagine how unfortunate it was for dinosaurs and what kind of disaster they faced. It wasn't just a piece of solid rock from space, but a lump of molten clay. It provoked not just a tsunami, but giant mud waves. It filled the atmosphere not only with a burnt smell, but also with an acidic and foul smell of rotten eggs. It didn't just sweep everything away with a blast wave. It provoked a volcanic winter, poisoned the air, and blocked the sun. And do you know what the most unfortunate thing was? If the angle of the fall had been just a little bit different, or if it had fallen a little further away, then there might not have been any global catastrophe. That asteroid, the size of Mount Everest, fell in the coastal part of the Yucatan Peninsula. This place separates the Gulf of Mexico from the Caribbean Sea. The asteroid touched both solid rock and water and immediately triggered strong tsunamis and mega ripples. These are large sand waves that are normally about 3 feet long on average and leave a pattern similar to dunes on the seabed. Oh, by the way, they're really called subaqueous dunes. So when the meteorite fell, it formed 52-foot-high mega ripples. Can you imagine? Giant waves of sea mud that are almost as high as a 5-story building. But how did the scientists figure it out? They used 3D seismic data and modeled the mega ripples pattern in the program. The data was based on the landscape of the bottom, which was impacted 66 million years ago. First, a powerful strike triggered a strong earthquake that liquefied the seabed layer, and then a high-grade tsunami triggered those mega ripples. That is, while giant waves on the surface flooded the land and went into open waters, large mud waves destroyed the seabed. Ancient fish, dinosaurs, and other underwater creatures didn't stand a chance. But what does this information tell us? Well, first, studying the effects of ancient tsunamis helps to reconstruct the past of our planet. Secondly, it helps us to be prepared if something like this happens in the future. Predicting a scenario like this could save countless lives in case of danger. Okay, there was a total mess in the water at the time of impact. But what was happening on land was much, much worse and scarier. But let's discuss the meteorite itself first and what it consisted of. The scientists analyzed the rocks at the impact site and saw traces of carbonaceous chondrites. This is the rock that makes up most of the meteorites in space. Often this rock contains water, clay, and organic compounds with carbon. It means that, in a sense, a lump of dirt the size of the highest mountain on the planet fell on Earth. And yes, carbonaceous chondrites often have an unusual smell of rotten eggs, tar, or wet hay. So it wasn't just very loud, but it also probably smelled bad. It was a fetid rocket on a planetary scale. However, at the time of the fall, not a single living creature was there to sniff it. All of them lost their lives in the first seconds of the disaster, hit by the devastating blast wave. It set a chain of events that later wiped out all the dinosaurs from the face of the Earth. The peninsula where the meteorite fell turned into a large crater in an instant. Thousands of tons of soot and ash were released into the air. A huge area was filled with thick smoke. The sky turned gray. Black clouds obscured the sun. But wait, where did the ashes come from? The crash site contained huge reserves of flammable materials. In simple words, the meteorite fell into a giant barrel of fuel which started to burn. The sky remained dark. Grass, plants, trees, and bacteria couldn't get enough sunlight. The green world began to wither. And this affected not only the impact site, but almost the entire continent. Even dinosaurs, living far away, felt the low temperatures and lack of ultraviolet light. Dinosaurs couldn't survive in such conditions. The environment was changing too fast. Then it got even worse. A firestorm was spreading in all directions from the place where the meteorite had fallen. The air inside the storm was poisonous and dangerous to inhale. And you know why? Because the meteorite fell in a coastal area and destroyed the seabed. And under that seabed, there were large reserves of sulfur. This toxic mass rose into the air mixed with ash, soot, red-hot pieces of rock, and meteorite particles. Then the winds picked up this cloud and began to spread it across the continent. The rainforests that survived the blast waves were still in danger, as the hot toxic cloud rained down red-hot ash upon them. This caused large-scale fires. The smoke from the burning trees rose and became part of the destructive cloud. The more trees burned, the larger and thicker the poisonous ash cloud grew. What could have stopped this catastrophe? Rain clouds filled with water, right? Good point, but they didn't. When the hot ash and sulfur fumes mixed with water, they created acid rain, a downpour of poisonous, corrosive mud that wiped out all life around it. Fires, firestorm, acid rain, sun blockage – how could dinosaurs survive after that? Where could they escape? Perhaps the ocean shore? Bad idea. Yeah, the water could have protected them from the fire and ashes, but there was another problem. Do you remember mega ripples and giant tsunamis? A huge wave that hit the shore at that moment could easily wash away New York. Smaller waves rolled across the Atlantic Ocean and the North Pacific. So, if dinosaurs on land had tried to hide near the shore, they would have been swept away like specks of dust by that giant tsunami. But what about underwater dinosaurs? They were not affected by the tsunami and the fire cloud, but they were trapped. Red-hot poison particles of ash and mud fell into the ocean in huge quantities and poisoned the water. Algae and phytoplankton were destroyed. Because of this, millions of fish lost their food supply. And as a result, larger fish and marine dinosaurs were left with nothing to eat. Large-scale famine triggered extinction in the ocean. Toxic particles poisoned the water for many marine life forms. The gills of fish couldn't extract pure oxygen from the water, which only worsened the situation. Near the Yucatan Peninsula, the ocean floor with its coral reefs and ancient sea creatures was destroyed. This huge part of Earth's biodiversity disappeared, upsetting the balance of the oceans. Of course, the destruction couldn't go on forever. At one point, the ashes cooled and settled to the ground. The sulfur cloud dispersed, the fires went out, and the air became clearer. Warm rays of sunlight began to shine down on Earth again. But there was something sinister about the silence. The planet no longer heard the rustle of pterodactyl wings, the roar of a hungry Tyrannosaurus, and the noise of a Velociraptor's fast feet. The storm had passed, along with the dinosaurs. By the way, some flying lizards and small animals survived. Later, they evolved into modern mammals and birds. It wasn't the meteorite that destroyed dinosaurs. Fires couldn't do it either. Dinosaurs disappeared because of the famine caused by the catastrophe. Disruption of the food chain led to the mass extinction of these magnificent lizards. After the catastrophe, life began to blossom again. However, the emergence of large mammals was still a long way off. But now, millions of years have passed. Large elephants, rhinos, and other animals walk on Earth, along with the most unique mammal on the planet, the human. Hey, welcome to the Dino New Year's Party. Hey, everyone you know well is here. Tyrannosaurus, Triceratops, Stegosaurus, Raptor, Diplodocus. But there will also be someone new, a guest who will surprise you. You see, paleontologists have discovered a new dinosaur species that was somewhat like the T-Rex, but with a twist. These guys would rather eat a crunchy salad than a juicy steak. Hey, meet this dude. Any guesses on how to pronounce this? Duonicus sakubactri. Thanks, please hold your applause. These are herbivorous guys that belong to the therizinosaurs. But they had one awesome feature. A feature that showed scientists that Duonicus belonged to a new branch of dinosaur evolution, about which little is known. But hey, let's go back to the dino party, shall we? Here you can see dinosaurs with different personalities. The T-Rex is a bully and toothy. The Velociraptor seems to be very toxic and moody. The Triceratops or Stegosaurus are aggressive but silent. You know, like those guys that don't touch anyone, but it's better not to mess with them. So among them all, the Therizinosaurus is a chill guy that will always help, will always keep you company at a party, and will never be annoying. Therizinosaurs lived in what is now Asia and North America during the late Cretaceous period, about 100 to 66 million years ago. Their anatomical features made them look more like predators like the T-Rex. But Therizinosaurs were herbivores, with large crescent-shaped claws. In some species, they reached up to 20 inches. Now imagine how dangerous these monsters would have been had they been carnivorous. But they used their claws to grab tree branches and eat leaves. The Deinonychus was quite large, just under 10 feet in length. A hippo was about the same size, and their weight was about 600 pounds, which is almost half the size of a horse. Therizinosaurs had a long mouth, a bit like a duck's nose, and long front paws with 3 thumbs. But the Deinonychus that has been found recently was unique because it only had 2 fingers on each hand. The 2-fingered dinosaur discovery has sparked joy among paleontologists. Okay, 2 fingers instead of 3, whatever, you might think. But it makes a big difference. It shows how dinosaurs evolved. The latest paleontology news reports that the discovery was made in Mongolia. It was the largest preserved claw in history. Its size was about 11 inches, and it had a curved shape. That means it was like a giant banana. The coolest thing was that the claw was covered with keratin. Our nails are made from this material too. Can you imagine? Large lizards that lived tens of millions of years ago had claws with the same composition as our nails. Nature is amazing, isn't it? Do you know this crazy theory that the T-Rex evolved into a chicken and the Velociraptor into an ostrich? There must have been tons of evolutionary changes. But the 2-fingered dinosaur discovery offers us a more understandable and more detailed explanation of how dinosaurs evolved. Therizinosaurs had 3 clawed fingers on each paw, but why did nature get rid of one of them? Scientists believe that it was practical. It's possible that a paw with 2 fingers was much stronger and more flexible than a paw with 3. This way, dinosaurs could grab vegetation and branches, like chameleons do. Scientists have also suggested that the 2-fingered long paw helped the dinosaur defend itself, care for its mates, and even play. It's hard to imagine what they could be playing at. Maybe they did high fives or high twos. It would be cool if they had used those paw pliers not only for taking food, but for fighting off predators. And speaking of predators, the T-Rex had a similar front paw structure, but its small paws were useless. It would be cool if the Deinonychus could box with them or climb trees. Yes, it was an herbivore, but that doesn't mean that other bad dinosaurs could bully it. Let's just think that the Deinonychus was kind of weak and formidable to the strong. That's why it would be the most welcome guest at the dinosaur party. But the strangest guest at this party would be the Dinochirus, named Terrible Hands. The case of the Deinonychus shows how dinosaurs evolved from having 3-fingered paws to being 2-fingered. The Dinochirus shows that ancient lizards could evolve into a horse or something else. It sounds weird, but let's get to know this guy better. In 1965, the arms, hands, and shoulder girdle of an unknown dinosaur was discovered in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. When paleontologists put the bones together, they got 2 long, creepy arms. For many years, those arms remained in the museum without a body. It looked funny and a little scary. Each arm was about 8 feet long. This is more than the tallest basketball players. Paleontologists were trying to find other dinosaur body parts in the Gobi Desert, but their attempts were unsuccessful. The Dinochirus became one of the most famous mysteries in paleontology. How big was the owner of such arms? What did it eat? How did it live? This remained unknown until 2014. According to the latest paleontology news about this lizard, a group of scientists from the Korea Institute of Geoscience and Mineral Resources has discovered other well-preserved remains of the Dinochirus. With their help, paleontologists have managed to recreate the lizard's appearance. And that breakthrough has turned out to be much cooler than the 2-fingered dinosaur discovery. Are you ready? The Dinochirus was colossal, rather slow, with a horse-like head and a spine that formed something like a hump. It looks super weird, even for a science fiction movie. This new dinosaur species belonged to Ornithomimosauria, an ostrich-like species, agile and fast-moving. But not the Dinochirus. Instead of speed and agility, the dinosaur had a large size. It was 36 feet long and weighed 13,200 pounds, which is almost the weight of an adult elephant and the length of half a metro wagon. Despite its size, the Dinosaurus was quite harmless. Its long muzzle looked like that of a duck or a horse. It also had no teeth. So for tyrannosaurs and other predatory giants, it was an easy lunch. And this is not just a guess. Scientists found bite marks on the discovered skeletons of this dinosaur. It seems this poor big dude met some really bad and hungry guys. But what was lunch to this strange lizard itself? It ate almost everything: soft plants, algae, small vertebrates, and fish. It sucked food from the bottom of lakes and rivers with its beak and tongue and swallowed stones to help grind the food. Those stones crushed the pieces of food and thus helped the stomach to digest stuff more easily. The dinosaur used its terrible hands to dig and pick up food from trees and the ground. But the strangest part of its body was its back and tail. The bones at the end of its tail were joined into a single structure called a pygostyle. This thing supports the feathers of modern birds. Now, it's possible that the Dinosaurus waved its tail like a fan, and its back had thick bone spikes that stuck up from its spine. Considering that those bones were covered with skin, the whole strange skeleton structure looked like a sail. You know how dinosaurs evolved to have such a strange shape, and probably ask yourself, hey, what's the point? Well, scientists believe that the ligaments coming out of the spine help support the dinosaur's heavy belly and legs. To better understand how that could work, imagine cable-stayed bridges. Long vertical beams have many cables that hold the roadway. Similar, the Dinosaurus spikes and ligaments help to hold the dinosaur's weight. Now, back at our dino party, it would be a shy, tall dude who accidentally drops a drinking glass and makes you feel awkward. It's lonely. It dreams of finding friends. And it will surely find them. A diplodocus would make a great buddy. A herbivorous dinosaur with 2 fingers that looks like a predator and a horse-like giant with 2 long arms show us how diverse dinosaur evolution can be. T-Rex, Velociraptor, Diplodocus, and others are the superstars of the ancient world. It would be cool if paleontologists could discover new dinosaur species that would remove the old guard from their pedestal of fame. Would you like to see a movie starring the Dinosaurus and the Duonicus? Hey, I would. Now, this bad boy was the size of a husky and could maybe pass for one, except it didn't have any fur and was a top predator with extra long, blade-like canine teeth. Ooh, charming. Meet the earliest known saber-toothed animal to have ever lived. It roamed the earth well before the dinosaurs. Scientists made the description of this creature based on its fossils found on the Spanish island of Majorca in the Mediterranean Sea. About 200 million years ago, none of us were around then, the very first true mammals appeared, and they lived right alongside the dinosaurs. But if we trace the family tree of mammals even further back, we'll find an ancient group called Therapsids. They didn't look like mammals we have today, but they had some key features that would eventually help define mammals. For example, Therapsids had special openings on the sides of their skulls for jaw muscles, and parts of their jaw bones would later evolve into the tiny middle ear bones that all mammals, including you, have today. So, the new discovery is what might be the oldest known Therapsid fossil. The fossil, which doesn't have an official species name yet, belongs to a group called Gorgonopsians. Those guys are more closely related to mammals than they are to any other living animals. Some of them were as small as cats, and others were as massive as polar bears. Gorgonopsians had some very mammal-like traits, like different types of teeth for different jobs. But unlike mammals, these ancient predators kept replacing their teeth, even their giant saber-like canines, over and over during their lives. Hey, that would be handy. Until now, the oldest Gorgonopsian fossils we knew about were around 265 million years old. But this new fossil is even older, dating back between 270 and 280 million years. The find was super detailed and complete, including its sharp knife-like fangs, part of its jaw, pieces of its spine, ribs, tailbones, and toe bones, plus most of one of its back legs. Even though the creature's skull wasn't complete, the scientists think it was about 7 inches long, and the animal itself would have been around the size of a medium-large dog, weighing between 66 and 88 pounds. But other than that, it didn't really look much like a dog. Even though it had some lizard-like features, calling it a lizard dog is totally wrong. Mammals and reptiles do share a super ancient ancestor from about 320 million years ago, but their evolutionary paths split a long time ago. When the newly found creature was alive, the island of Majorca was right in the middle of the gigantic supercontinent Pangaea. Back then, this area went through super wet and super dry seasons. Scientists have always wondered if major moments in mammal history happened in tropical places like this, but we just didn't have the right fossils to prove it. Now, with the discovery of the oldest known Gorgonopsian in Majorca, the missing pieces of the puzzle are coming together. It looks like some huge steps in mammal evolution could have happened in low-latitude environments we haven't explored much yet. The so-called gap in the fossil record might just be because paleontologists weren't looking in the right spots. Our hero of the day wasn't the only cool guy rocking the planet before dinos settled in. Over 500 million years ago, the weirdest predators to have ever existed ruled the oceans. The name is a bit tricky to pronounce, so I'm not going to. Okay, it's Anomalocaris, but it just literally means unusual shrimp. This creature looked nothing like anything alive today. Scientists think it was the first true apex predator, the orca of its time. Anomalocaris was massive for its era, as it grew up to 3 feet from its sharp grabbing arms to the tips of its tail fins. For a while, everyone thought trilobites were its go-to meal, but new research shows it wasn't strong enough to crack open trilobite armor. So instead, it was a speedy, agile hunter with awesome vision, and it often picked off soft-body animals that zipped through the open water. Now, another really cool creature from pre-dino times is a fish that could walk on land. Tiktaalik lived in marshy rivers that looked a lot like today's Amazon rainforest. It could grow up to 9 feet long, and it found its prey in rivers and inlets like a modern-day freshwater crocodile. It had a flexible neck and even some early versions of lungs, and thanks to them, it could survive both in water and out of it. Why fish like Tiktaalik started moving toward land about 395 million years ago is still a bit of a mystery. Around that time, the ancient supercontinent called Gondwana was drifting closer to the land that would become North America. This slow movement created lots of shallow, swampy habitats, which were perfect places for crocodile-like animals to thrive. Plus, these areas were near the equator, so they were warm and tropical. But there wasn't a lot of food waiting for them on land, so maybe they moved there for safety reasons. There were fewer predators and better spots to lay eggs there compared to the water. Creatures first adapted to living in open water, then shallow water, then marshes and river edges, and only after a long, slow transition did they finally step fully onto land. Now, how about a millipede the size of a small car and weighing as much as a large dog? This beauty lived over 300 million years ago in what is now England. Back then, during the Carboniferous period, Earth's atmosphere had way more oxygen, over 26%, compared to today's 21%. Scientists used to think the high oxygen levels were the only reason these creatures could get so big. But back then, they found a new fossil from a time when oxygen wasn't that much higher than today. They discovered it purely by accident, when a boulder split just right and revealed one of the most complete and largest giant millipede specimens ever. This one could have lived not just in swampy areas, but also in open woodlands filled with tasty seeds, nuts, and maybe even small animals. There's a chance that this beast wasn't a slow, plant-munching crawler, but a predator that would snap up whatever it could find. After dominating the Earth for about 45 million years, the giant millipedes eventually vanished. Probably the reptiles pushed them out, clearing the way for the age of the dinosaurs. Now, in case you ever wondered what would happen if you crossed a polar bear with a saber-toothed cat, here's the answer. This guy ruled the southern ecosystems after migrating 7,000 miles across the supercontinent Pangaea around 252 million years ago. It had a tough skin like a rhino's and massive canines, perfect for tearing away huge chunks of meat, and it was an excellent runner. Once it got to its new home in what is now South Africa, it replaced a whole group of local predators. But its glory didn't last long, as closer to the end of the Permian period, massive volcanic eruptions made the weather patterns change and wiped out about 90% of all species. And because top predators are usually big, slow to grow, and not super common, they often vanish among the first when massive extinction events hit. And that's how our guy here went extinct. Our final creature of the day was a dragonfly that lived around 300 million years ago and had a wingspan of over 2 feet, 6 long, spiny legs, and huge, bulging eyes. Megangura. This 4-winged giant is most likely the largest flying insect that ever lived, and it easily outsizes today's dragonflies, which are its distant relatives. Like modern dragonflies, Megangura like to hang out in open areas near ponds and slow-moving streams. But unlike today's dragonflies, it wasn't just catching tiny bugs. This guy was likely the top predator in these open spaces. It used the spines on its legs like a flying trap to snatch prey out of the air, including other flying insects, small amphibians, and even lizard-like creatures. Scientists found the first fossils of Megangura in 1880 in the coal-rich rocks in France. The fossils were incredibly well preserved and showed off the detailed vein patterns in their wings. Scientists think Megangura grew so huge because it didn't have much competition from vertebrates, and the air back then, during the Carboniferous period, had a lot more oxygen than it does today.
The Tyrannosaurus rex, the formidable predator, the world-known celebrity of the animal kingdom, the king of all dinos. Since its discovery in 1902, this dangerous predator has fascinated both researchers and the regular public. But despite its terrifying reputation, there were actually other beasts that could defeat the T-Rex. And one of the true nemeses of this dinosaur was the Triceratops, a herbivore. But despite its plant-based diet, the dino was huge and had 2 nightmarish, large horns and a smaller one, along with thickened bones which added to its defenses and helped protect itself from dreadful predators like the T-Rex. This dino was something like proof that herbivores were no pushovers. Its formidable horns were about a foot wide at their base and tapered into mean points capable of skewering any predator, even a T-Rex like Juicy Barbecue. The colossal skull of the Triceratops sported an enormous frill made of protective solid bone, which was topped with hornlets. From the tip of the animal's beak to the spiked rim of the frill, the head of the Triceratops could reach a whopping 10 feet in length and weigh around a ton. This gargantuan construction, the head of the dino, was attached to the body with the help of a ball and socket joint. This allowed the dino to swivel its head around with astonishing speed, brandishing its horns to scare predators away. That's one of the reasons why a T-Rex that decided to attack a Triceratops was actually taking a big risk. The battle could easily go either way. Of course, the king of the dinosaur world could win and get its long-awaited feast, but just as likely, the hunted could become the hunter and end the T-Rex's game. Now, how about we find some more cool and lesser-known facts about those intriguing creatures, dinosaurs? For example, dinos almost certainly did not roar. Scientists think they might have cooed instead. More accurately, they probably produced sounds in ways similar to the way ostriches boom or doves coo. You see, many modern birds use a method of producing sounds called closed-mouth vocalization. Sounds are made by inflating the throat rather than passing air through the syrinx, the vocal organ of birds. In other words, the Jurassic Park movies got it all wrong. A lot of early dino reconstructions appeared under the influence of those scary noises that we associate with modern predators, like lions. So, on screen, dinosaurs have their mouths open when they produce sounds, just like lions when they roar. But real dinos wouldn't have done that, especially not before charging at their prey. They wouldn't have advertised their presence to other animals nearby, not when all they wanted was to have a meal. The Quetzalcoatlus was a member of the ancient group of flying reptiles, pterosaurs, and it was also the largest flying animal to have ever lived on Earth. The giraffe-sized creature had thin limbs, a startlingly long beak, and a staggering 40-foot wingspan. Researchers believe that these creatures could have also used their folded-up wings as legs, so they probably walked on all fours. Scientists discovered the Quetzalcoatlus about 50 years ago, but they still have a tricky time trying to piece together the details of this animal's life. For example, how did it even manage to lift its ginormous body off the ground when flying? Whatever the answer is, this creature is our first real look at the entirety of the largest animals ever to fly. One of the reasons why it's been taking so long to unearth the secrets of the Quetzalcoatlus is because this creature had hollow bones that helped it to fly, just like modern flying animals. So, when you find these potato chips-like bones preserved in super hard rock, you need to somehow remove them without destroying them. And that's a really tough task. The Tyrannosaurus rex was quite a slow runner. Its speed was likely to be just about 10 miles per hour, which is approximately as fast as the speed of an average human runner. As for T-Rex babies, according to hatchling recreations from the American Museum of Natural History, they were pretty cute. About the size of super skinny turkeys and covered with downy feathers. The largest land-based dino was the Argentinosaurus. This massive animal often reached up to 130 feet in length and 69 feet in height. Considering the average blue whale is around 70 feet long, you can easily imagine just how giant that dinosaur was. Many dinos had feathers, and I'm not only talking about avian ones. The largest feathered dinosaur we know about was the Eutyrannus huali, which translates as a beautiful feathered tyrant. It was a super predator and cousin of the T-Rex. Scientists think that the dino most likely relied on its feathers to stay warm. However surprising it may sound, some of the biggest dinosaurs were actually herbivores. Let's take the Brachiosaurus and Apatosaurus, for example. These creatures were giant, but followed a plant-based diet. Now, I'm not sure if you should try it or not, but apparently, you can tell the difference between a simple stone and a dinosaur fossil by licking it. It may not sound like the most legitimate approach, but even paleontologists sometimes find themselves doing this. The thing is, if you lick a potential fossil, it will slightly stick to your tongue. That's because fossils are way more porous than stones. When dinosaurs first saw the light of day during the Triassic period, around 230 million years ago, Earth's continents were clustered together and formed one giant supercontinent called Pangaea. Over the next 165 million years, Pangaea slowly drifted apart, and that separated many dinosaur species from one another. And still, most of the world's dinosaur fossils are found in 3 places: the high-altitude Badlands of China, North America, and Argentina have the largest amount of fossils, or at least easily accessible ones. In reality, most parts of the world are covered with fossils, but those located in desert-like environments are easier to find due to the lack of vegetation. Interestingly, most fossilized dino bones aren't bones anymore. The fossilization process often occurs when something gets trapped between layers of sediment or sand. For millions of years, those remnants stay there. At one point, they got surrounded by a layer of water, It replaces the original organic material with minerals. In other words, it's not the real thing anymore. It's a rock-like copy. The Triceratops boasted 3 giant horns sticking out of its head, but its teeth were even more fascinating. This dino had around 800 teeth, and new ones kept growing throughout its life. These teeth grew in sets of 36 to 40 tooth columns, with each column having 3 to 5 teeth, vertically stacked on one another. Some dinos had hollow bones, like today's birds. These creatures stored air in their bones, which helped them improve their breathing abilities. It made these dinosaurs lighter on their feet and allowed them to breathe much more efficiently. The Nigersaurus replaced its teeth every 2 weeks. This unique creature had rows and rows of teeth in reserve. They were hidden away in its mouth, and when a set of teeth wore out, they fell out, and the next row moved into position. Dinosaurs didn't all go extinct at the same time as soon as the asteroid crashed into Earth. Instead, the space rock likely triggered a chain reaction of events which changed the face of the planet. Of course, it didn't happen overnight, but over the next few hundred or even thousands of years. As a result, all but avian dinosaurs went extinct. The word dinosaur came from the Greek language. Deinos means terrible, and sauros means lizard. So basically, dinosaur can be translated to terrible lizard. You may object that not all dinosaurs were terrifying predators. This name might be appropriate for the T-Rex, but not, let's say, the tiny May. Rumor has it that when Sir Richard Owen, an English biologist, came up with the name for dinosaurs, he used the word terrible in a different sense. He described those ancient creatures as fearfully great, as in far larger in size than any previously discovered reptiles.
If dinosaurs once ruled the Earth, it seems like we should stumble upon their bones everywhere. But we don't. Why is that? Aren't you curious? There's no conspiracy here. The truth is that the quest to find dino remains is much more complex than meets the eye. Yes, dinosaur bones are real, we found tons of them, and they've already been uncovered on every continent, despite many people arguing otherwise. And the uneven distribution of these prehistoric treasures is simply a quirk of nature. Turns out fossilization is an incredibly rare phenomenon. It only happens under specific conditions. When a dino bites the dust, the journey to fossilization begins. The carcass needs swift burial by sediment, followed by layers upon layers, creating a geological pressure cooker. Minerals sneak into the bones, morphing them into stone. This unique recipe predominantly occurs underwater, where sediments like sand and mud can gracefully cloak the fallen giants. Which is why dinos meeting their end above ground rarely end up as fossils. For example, we barely find any fossils of species who lived in the jungle, and especially in the mountains. Researchers reveal that many fossils arise from areas near lakes or rivers. Whether drowned before a flood or carried away by rain, these dinosaurs lucked out in fossil formation. These are the reasons why we don't discover dinos in every nook and cranny. The harsh reality is that we might never meet many dino species, all because of these limitations of fossilization. Around 71% of dinosaurs will never be discovered. We don't even know how many species we've lost due to unsuitable conditions. If we're super lucky, we might find some fossils of mountain dinosaurs in local rivers, but that's a very rare case. So yes, while dinosaurs graced the globe, all the fossils we found so far were due to great luck. Now, this makes you wonder how much dinosaurs lived in general. There are myths about them leading a tortoise-paced life. People believe that dinos were sauntering through centuries to achieve colossal sizes. Funny enough, the truth is exactly opposite. In reality, dinosaurs lived shortly and shone bright like rock stars. Unfortunately, once these animals hit the prime of reproduction, they often found themselves on the fast track to fossilization before reaching their full-size potential. What's interesting is that dinosaur life cycles align with the rhythm of trees. Perhaps you know that it's possible to determine how old the tree lived by its rings. It's true, each pair of light and dark rings equals 1 year of age. Like the rings tell us about trees, dinos' bones tell us about them. Researchers examine slices of bones under a microscope, analyzing different tissues to gauge growth rates. Thick rings mean rapid growth, and narrow ones mean a more leisurely pace. In the animal kingdom, bigger usually equals longer life. So, some people wonder whether big dinos actually live longer. Apparently so. Large sauropod dinosaurs, akin to ancient behemoths, likely took around 30 to 35 years to reach their colossal peak. Following that, they might have enjoyed a few more decades on the prehistoric stage. For smaller dinosaurs, like the nimble arthropods, life was a swift affair. They grew to their full size after around 4 to 5 years of life. But after a mere 3 to 4 years, these mini dinos, unless super fortunate, might have bid adieu. So it turns out many dinosaurs didn't live for hundreds of years. Most of them, even colossal ones, rarely marked even their 50s. It's a surprise if you compare them to today's giants like blue whales and elephants. These animals boast human life-like spans. Blue whales live for around 80 to 90 years, and many elephants make it to their 60s to 70s. And they're not as big as some dinosaurs. Yeah, it's a pity that they left our planet so early, and we don't have a chance to study so many of them. What's even sadder is that dinosaurs have been doomed from the beginning. Even if a random cosmic rock hadn't hit our planet, dinosaurs would still have gone extinct by today. The Chicxulub meteorite smashed into our planet 66 million years ago. For the record, it didn't actually destroy all the dinosaurs, only the non-avian ones. The rest became birds. Yep, some of these colossal creatures became tiny chickens and pigeons we see today. Guess they know what wolves might feel like. But even before that happened, the Earth was slowly preparing a catastrophe for them. Recent research shows that the era before the asteroid impact wasn't exactly a paradise. It was more like a brewing cauldron of environmental challenges. The scientists delved into the Deccan Traps, one of the largest volcanic regions in present-day West India. They came up with an innovative technique to study the past through volcanoes by measuring sulfur concentrations in rocks. That's how they learned that the Deccan Traps, spewing millions of cubic miles of molten rock, contributed to global climate shifts. Over 100,000 years before the infamous Chicxulub meteor struck, global temperatures might have plummeted by several degrees. This sudden drop was most likely triggered by sulfur emissions from the Deccan Traps. And this, in turn, led to pretty wild, unpleasant climate conditions. The Earth ended up experiencing volcanic winters. This made life super challenging for flora and fauna and set the stage for the eventual dinosaur extinction. So, even if there was no asteroid, dinos wouldn't survive for too long. For a long time, scientists have been arguing whether it was the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs or the volcanic activity. Finally, technology is developing, and we can use it to answer this question. An AI system developed by researchers offers its own perspective. Using over 100 processors fed with geological and climatic data, the AI explored the fossil records and over 300,000 possible scenarios to find the truth. And, according to the machine, the volcanic theory is far more plausible. It told the scientists that the climate changes required for a mass extinction were likely caused by the Deccan Traps alone, even without the asteroid impact. The volcanic eruptions coincided with the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary, starting 300,000 years before the asteroid, and it continued for an extended period. This raised some questions about human versus AI judgment. Some scientists expressed skepticism and talked about the AI's potential bias. But the researchers who led the project are excited about the novelty of their method and its potential to explore other periods of Earth history. However, it will likely take some time for humans to build trust in AI. We already mentioned that non-avian dinosaurs survived this apocalyptic event. For some reason, neither volcanoes nor an asteroid wiped out everything on our planet. Many animals survived, evolving into mammals, and many plants continued to flourish. Plants went through this even better than animals, actually. A catastrophe bid farewell to about 75% of Earth's species, not to count all the individual losses. Yet, botanical wonders survived. Around 78% of our plant species owe their existence to their persistent ancestors. Unfortunately, plants don't turn into fossils as easily as animals do, and we already know that this process isn't quick or common either. So the researchers had to turn to evolutionary trees. They analyzed up to 73,000 surviving plant species. The findings revealed a remarkable narrative of evolution and dominance. Turns out, after the Great Extinction, these sneaky plants seized the opportunity, just like mammals who rose to prominence after the dinosaur era. Major orders, like those of mint, magnolia, and orchids, not only coexisted with dinosaurs, but thrived beyond the extinction. The secret to their success lies in how they could adapt for pollination. They didn't care whether they were pollinated by wind or insects or anything else, basically eating resources from anywhere they could find. Thanks to this awesome adaptability, which scientists call flower power, their legacy lives and flourishes today.